Let me get a little bit of a drink here. There we go. A major sell-off on Wall Street. That's what we're talking about. A lot of people perhaps left without a voice today watching this market that appeared to be in a free fall. Let's bring in Michael Lee right now to join us. And Michael, you take over the conversation here while I get a sip of water. What do you think was behind it? Because we now know that the Dow, I think it closed down 751 points, but at one point it was 900 points, then back up and down. Folks saying that one of the main reasons was an issue, dealing with possibly more lockdowns as a result of COVID.
Yeah, so I have a very different viewpoint along those lines. What is going on is the interest rate market is really taking us for a spin, and that interest rates have dropped dramatically since the middle of March. What I would say, there's a few factors going into that. First, the bond market has almost completely dismissed any notion of inflation that many are speaking of right now. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. I think those fears were a little bit overdone earlier this year, and I think they're a little bit too dismissive right now. And so there's a lot of betting going on in the interest rates market as to where the economy is going to go. And whenever interest rates are unsettled in either direction, you're going to have a lot of uncertainty in the equity markets. And so I think what people are looking at, the interest rate or the yield curve right now, and saying, okay, there are some real growth concerns going forward. None of this 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 5 trillion, whatever trillions of infrastructure is any chance of passing. So what's next, and what's going to take the economy forward now that there's no more additional stimulus? So until we have some sort of stabilization, certainty in interest rates, I think we're going to continue to see heightened volatility. I personally think this is a fantastic time to buy. When you look at the fear greed index, we are at, I think we're closing near like a 15 or a 16 out of 100 in terms of fear. And when people are fearful, that's when you want to be buying stocks. And when that green index is up in the 80s and 90s, that's when you want to be selling stocks. So I think this is a bit overdone. And even though we were down 2.5%, 2% today, that makes us about 3 or 3.5% from absolute all-time highs. So we have a pretty good foundation in this economy. Obviously not kind of the growth or the best situation, but we're looking at an earnings quarter where earnings are going to be up 70% year over year. Next quarter, they're going to be up close to 30 and 20% to close out the year. So I think for investors sitting on the sideline right now, days when it's really ugly is a time when you want to take cash off the sideline and start buying.
But Michael, what about what it means to people that aren't, investors, people that are just, sitting around their kitchen table day after day, trying to make ends meet, and they see what's happening with the markets, and they see at the same time, inflation, rising cost of goods across the board. What about that? What about those folks? What do you have to say to them?
Well, first, the number one, cost that's increased is energy. And, you have an administration that would prefer to do without fossil fuels. So to fill up your car, it's going to be more expensive until something changes. And then in terms of a lot of the other goods, it's a lot easier to flip the light switch off in terms of the economy than to flip that light switch back on. So it's going to take a little while, but I anticipate at some point in the beginning of next year and next summer, you're going to see some supply gluts as a global supply chain replenishes itself, and the cost of some of these goods will either flatline or come down slightly. It'd be hard to have a full retreat, but with that, I'd say with energy, you're going to continue to pay higher costs until you have dramatic policy changes, and everything else should sort of subside.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's bring in our panel to get their reaction, and keep Michael with us as well. So if anyone has a question for him, seeing the moves on Wall Street, we've talked with several economic experts throughout the day today based on what we're seeing. And is it a fear, do you think, Ford, of the Biden administration, not having confidence in the Biden administration moving forward with the economy, or this fear of the COVID-19 pandemic causing, lockdowns to be, implemented across the board again in communities? What is causing what's happening, in your opinion?
Well, I think that Michael actually hit the nail on the head, and that is